Mr. Prondak is here. I saw you go out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call to order our first hearing of the evening, and this is the application of Michael and Jessica Sergi. The application is dated November 15th, 2018, and they're appealing a finding by the building commissioner regarding the parking of an alleged commercial vehicle on their premises in allegedly in violation of the town bylaw. The applicants are also requesting that if they are in violation of the bylaw, they're requesting a variance as the suitable relief to be granted. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me this evening to my immediate right is board member Kathleen O'Donnell, and to my immediate left is board member Therese Quijano. The rules of the board are first that we'll hear from the applicants. We'll hear from people who have questions of the applicants. We'll hear from people who want to speak in support of the applicant's position, those who want to speak in opposition, if any, to the applicant's position. And then we'll consider the application. We're tape recording the proceedings here as always. It is being taped for television purposes, but the official record of this proceeding is the tape recording. I've summarized the advertisement, and we have the application filed by the applicant, and we have a letter that has been submitted to the Board of Appeals dated January 3rd, 2019, describing the nature of the appeal and some legal research and historical research that Mrs. Sergi has performed, and so we thank the applicant for submitting those materials. In addition to the application and the advertisement, we have a series of email transmissions that have been received over the past week or so. There are perhaps 10 or more of them. I'm not going to take the time to read them all because I'll put everyone to sleep and we'll be here till 11:30. But they all have a common theme, I guess is the way to put it. They're all neighbors of Mr. and Mrs. Sergi. They have received notice that they're requesting a variance to continue to park a van in the driveway. All of them fully support the application for a variance. They have lived in the neighborhood for a wide variety of years. A couple are new neighbors, but some are 18 and 25-year-old residents of this neighborhood. Most of them have children. They're all deeply invested in the Milton community, and they indicate that for as long as they've known Mike and Jessica Sergi, they've always had a van in their driveway. They always maintain their home, yard, and vehicles impeccably. Nobody knows anybody who opposes the application, and they thank the board for the board's consideration. So rather than as I say, that's a fair summary of all of them. The people who have submitted emails are Joe Keene on January 5, 2019, Lisa Fahey on January 6, 2019, Katie Shields on January 4, 2019, Anna Zukauskas on January 5, 2019. Bob Nomes, N-A-U-M-E-S, or Noms, on January 5, 2019. Mark Redmond on January 6, 2015. Anna Garrido White on January 5, 2019. Kelly Twitchell on January 8, 2019. And Catherine Loftus on January 8th, 2019. So we thank all of the neighbors for taking the time to write to the board. We'll have these emails as part of the evidence in the proceeding. So Mr. and Mrs. Sergi here. Good. Do you want to come on up and have a seat? And Mr. Prondak, they're the appellants, so why don't you come over here and make yourself comfortable as well.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Mr. Prondak.
You as well.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Sergi, welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Good. We're delighted to hear from you. Why don't you tell us the basis of your appeal and why you believe that the board should either find you're not violating the bylaw or whether the board should consider granting you a variance from the terms of the bylaw.
Okay. Most of our arguments are stated in the letter that was
Yeah,
sent
and
to you.
they're well put forth. The problem is, well, people out there haven't read the letter.
Oh, okay, so I'll summarize the
So just,
arguments in the
summarize
letter.
what the
Sure.
position is.
So first, we do not believe
Why
that
don't you
we're...
identify yourself
Oh,
first?
I'm Jessica Sergi,
Michael
462.
Sergi.
Well, and you live at?
462 Adams Street.
Great.
So the first point that we have is we don't believe that we're in violation of the zoning bylaws. The bylaws state that in a residential zone, you cannot have a commercial vehicle, but commercial, unless it is garaged. And two things are undefined in the bylaws. First, commercial is undefined, and second, garaged is undefined. So we spoke with the building commissioner about how we could resolve this issue and how commercial vehicle is defined. And so in our case, commercial vehicle was defined because the vehicle in question has commercial plates, there's lettering on the sides, and it has a roof rack. So we suggested if we take those three away, so there are no commercial plates, no lettering, and no roof rack, then it will not be a commercial vehicle and we're not in violation. But that would not cure the issues here, according to the building commissioner, because it would still be primarily used for commercial purposes. And similarly, the term garaged is not defined. So I asked what if we did a carport or we did something else? Because for us, it would be a substantial hardship to garage the vehicle because our garage was built in 1910 or so, and so really no vehicle can fit in it. But that also would not be acceptable. And so I looked at other surrounding towns that have similar regulations that state that commercial vehicles can't be in a residential zone. And all of those, for the towns that define it, they define it as 10,000 pounds or more, so it's not based on plate or lettering or racks, but instead it's based on weight, on gross vehicle weight.
In this particular vehicle that you're parking in the driveway, what does it weigh?
I think it's less than 6,000.
Okay. And can you tell me what's the make and model of the
Yes,
vehicle?
it's a 2015 Nissan NV.
2,500.
Okay, what does the NV stand for? What does that do? Is it just
That's just what it says
is
on
it
it.
like a van,
It's the
a little
model number.
minivan or something like
It's
that?
a cargo van, like
Yeah.
Amazon drives around your neighborhood.
Oh, I did, I looked
Yeah,
at,
the
I see
pictures,
the pictures, but I couldn't, maybe because of failing eyesight, I did look at the pictures and they were very helpful. Thank you for that. But I couldn't see any lettering on the van. Where is the lettering?
Oh, it's right on the front, yeah, it's not in this, but right on the front driver and passenger side, there's a square box that says Sergi Contracting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You have a picture of it there?
I don't know, I just have the pictures that I
How
saw.
big is the square, approximately?
Oh, yeah.
2 feet by 14 inches.
Yeah. It's just on the driver's seat.
It's blocked by the bush.
Okay, that's why I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sergi Contracting, 2 feet by 2 feet.
No, 14 inches, so it's 2 feet by like 1 foot.
Okay, 2 feet by 1 foot, thank you. And you have a general contracting business, or? Good for you.
One person, small business.
That's as small as you can get.
That's it.
But I think you may have 2 people. who-
Correct,
who
my
deal-
secretary.
Who deal with the business, yeah. And she's not being paid enough money, I
We could argue that.
But, okay, so And you do general contracting, or?
Yeah, mostly repair work, handyman stuff.
Okay,
But I have my license, kitchens, bathrooms, you know.
great. And do you have a separate place of business, or do you work out of your home?
I work out of the van, yeah.
Okay, okay, great. So why don't you continue, Mrs. Smith?
So I think that sums up why we don't think we're in violation. I also put in the towns that I found that had the 10,000 pound definition, which were Braintree, Quincy, and Hingham. So then the second argument, I suppose, is that assuming there is a violation, a variance is appropriate here. So the standard for having a variance allowed is that the land and structures, let me just look at the law. Owing to circumstances relating to the land or structures affecting such, that it would be a hardship, financial or otherwise, for us to become into compliance with the bylaw. And so here, it would be a substantial hardship for our family to basically knock down the current garage and rebuild a garage that would fit the van, which probably would also require us to come here for another variance. Because
Love the business.
Yeah,
We would
so,
like to see you. Don't worry
so
about that.
That would be our substantial hardship here. And, you know, as you stated, our neighbors, the other part of the statute is that the variance can't nullify or substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the bylaw, and that it would not be a substantial detriment to the public good. And here, as you said, anybody who we know that has voiced their opinion is in support of this variance. So those are our basic arguments.
Okay, let me ask you this. On the garage that you have, I did take a look at that via some satellite. And do you park any cars in the garage?
No.
And is that because it's too small for
Yes.
modern vehicles?
Yes.
And it was built, did you say, in,
I think it's 1950,
okay.
20.
And if you had to build a garage that was of sufficient size to house two vehicles that most people do have, do you have any guesstimate as to what the cost of that would be?
That's his department.
How much money do you have?
Don't ask me that. If you ask my wife, she's got all
Ask
my
him,
money.
he would know. How much money do you have? You know, there's minimums and there's no maximum.
Sure.
But there's gotta be, I can't, if I gotta go for variance and everything else, who knows? That time and money. And if you're gonna do two, why wouldn't you go for four?
It depends on how much room you have in your backyard and how much you've
Exactly.
got to spend.
And we have.
Would you agree with me, it would cost you
Substantial.
tens and tens of thousands of dollars
Yes,
to do
correct.
that? And with respect to your remedy, that you would, the signs, are they painted on the vehicle?
No, stickers.
The stickers, so they can peel right off? Or you could get some type of magnetic sticker and just put it on and take it
It's
off?
not code for the state. It's gotta be stuck on there.
Oh, it does have to be
So
stuck on.
if he was parked in a commercial spot in Boston, for example, you can't have the magnetic.
Because people are able to take it off your car, put it on their cars.
Yeah,
Put it
but,
on 5 cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
so you'd get a ticket for being in violation of the commercial rules.
So your position is that you're willing to remove the sticker? You're willing to get passenger plates and not have commercial plates, or just cover the plates
The
over?
problem with that is it gets into an insurance area. So like, you kind of want to do things legitimately, and legitimately, if it's a commercial vehicle, it should have a commercial policy with commercial plates. Now, there's probably some loopholes you could get around that, but is that worth it? If I get in an accident, I'm not covered because the town didn't want a sticker on my truck? Doesn't make sense.
So you're proposing that you would...
Keep
you
it the
would
same.
Cover it over, or just leave it
No,
as...
Well,
well,
given the pictures, you can't see it, and from the front of the house, you can't even find the vehicle on my property. It's pretty non-offensive, in our opinion, and all of our neighbors' opinions that have to look at it.
Tell me about the roof rack. Why would you take the roof rack off? Is it
well,
some...
we were just trying to see if there was a way that we could not be brought to court, basically. At that point, we had the probable cause hearing. And so we asked, okay, so how can we resolve this? And asked those questions.
Okay.
So, but right now, we're looking to keep it as is and keep it parked where it is.
Yeah, I can't find the pictures. Do you have a picture of the
yeah,
roof rack? Is it just a normal roof rack that one finds on typical Nissan vehicles?
I mean, it's not like overly huge or in your face, if that's what you mean.
Okay. So it's a small metal roof rack, and did you install that yourself on the vehicle?
I had it installed.
Okay. Yeah, that's
It's
the
a custom,
dealership or somewhere
it's a
else?
custom aluminum rack, a higher end rack.
That's great, you can handle those back. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
The only other thing I'd add is we have one direct abutter, and she's here in support. She did not write an email, but she is here in support. And one other neighbor is also here as well who did not write an email.
Okay, good, we'll certainly hear from them. Ms. O'Donnell, do you have any questions of the applicants?
No, I do not. I do not.
People are trying to pick up speed. I think you've answered all the questions I had.
You asked
Mr. Prondak, do you want to be heard on this application?
Just very briefly, in that, Ms. Sergi mentioned at the beginning that there were three things that she had offered to remove: the roof racks, the signage, and the plates. I do not recall, and if I missed that, I apologize, I do not recall the issue of removing the plates or going back to a passenger plate. If the van is turned into simply a passenger vehicle, then there is no issue with the office, with our office. That being said, there are a lot of things in our zoning bylaw that aren't defined, and I'm challenged with the task of sorting those out and trying to enforce that rule fairly and uniformly across the town. And for a long time, we struggled with, because of basically the housing boom, an inability to proactively seek out violations like this. We were recently, a year ago, we were given a position of a code enforcement officer who is dedicated to doing that for the entire town. That was passed by town meeting. And it was Mr. Birchamer, who was here tonight, who actually did the investigation and the citing of this commercial vehicle. So we do believe that it qualifies as a commercial vehicle, and it was cited as such, and I believe that part of the appeal should be upheld.
Does it still qualify or constitute a commercial vehicle if Mr. and Mrs. Sergi remove the signs and maybe the roof rack, if they left the roof rack there, and they covered over the commercial plates with a little booty or something like that?
Well, I think that approach makes it difficult for me to enforce it uniformly, because then I have to take that into account on every violation that I have to enforce. And would I love it if there was a better definition in the zoning bylaw? Absolutely. But I don't have that. And then it becomes, a matter of enforcement. And, do we have to monitor that? And what if we see it one night, when we're out doing the neighborhood, and then that plate is not covered, and then we're citing them for not covering the plate because it's a violation.
Because the whole purpose of the statute, or the bylaw, I guess, when it's talking about you can put it in a garage.
Right.
Leave it as it is, put it in the garage. Nobody can see it, so therefore it doesn't create this offensive consideration for neighbors and abutters. And is there a difference in your mind? I don't want to give you a hard time, Mr. Prondak, between whether they put it in a garage or whether they put a tarpaulin over it? And
Yeah, I believe the intention of the law is inside a garage, some type of garage structure. And again, that comes down to uniformity and the range of requests, of creative requests that I've received over the years is enormous, considering the issue.
Sure.
So, again, it's difficult for me to...
Okay, well, I took a look at some statistics, and one of the statistics that I believe in, it sounds accurate, that Milton has about 60,000 residents as of 2018. That's what it said. It said 59,180 residents. Do you know, and so it's predominantly residential community. That's one of our never-ending problems, I guess. But it's also one of the never-ending blessings. What percentage of the vehicles registered in Milton, do you know, have commercial plates?
I have no idea.
I mean, is this something you run into all the time, or is this?
Of the primary complaints that we deal with, commercial vehicles, unregistered vehicles, junk and debris, those are the three primary zoning complaints, the three biggest zoning complaints that we deal with across the town. As far as the numbers, the residential numbers, the number that I'm most aware of is we're 97% residential and 3% commercial.
I think that's probably very accurate. Of the complaints that you do have, and this is an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, of commercial plates being used in residential areas, do most of those complaints result from people attaching commercial plates to distinctly commercial vehicles, like a pickup truck or a larger piece of equipment, as opposed to a 4,000 gross weight van that would ordinarily be like a personal van, but for the fact that it had a commercial plate on it?
Most of the vehicles that we encounter are larger, obviously commercial vehicles with racks, with signage. So, yes, but we will occasionally see larger trucks with
Right next to it?
with personal plates on them.
Okay.
But you can't do anything about that if the truck's lettered?
No, we would still cite them as a commercial vehicle.
But if it's
Even
not
though-
lettered, you wouldn't?
It depends, it would depend on the size and, the fact that it's got racks, utility boxes, utility bodies. There's a number of things that we take into consideration.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think that'll do it.
I have just one question of Mrs. Sergi, because I think you are an attorney in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I
And I
am.
guess my question to you is, if the board sought to give you the variance that you're asking for, do you think the board would be engaging in spot zoning?
No,
And why not?
because you're not zoning, well, I don't believe you would be. And I cannot remember this, though we looked at for the other hearings I was here for, I did look at this issue, and I can't remember
I don't mean to put you on the
precise, no, I don't remember the precise,
spot.
this isn't my,
I'd say what
I'll do the lawyer dance if this isn't what I do, but, but I
Well, it may
don't
not
think it
be
will.
what you do, right?
Because you're not zoning our whole residence as commercial. We're just asking for a variance to allow our commercial vehicle, even though I argue it's not commercial,
Right.
to remain on the property.
Yeah. And I guess one of the questions is, there's such a variety of types of vehicles, and
Right.
some have lettering, some don't have lettering, and
Well, and some are, I mean, it does seem like there are a lot of, and I mentioned this in the letter, there are a lot of commercial vehicles with commercial plates that aren't used for contracting. And it seems that, the standard that's being applied on a case-by-case basis focuses on contractors.
what about people who have a vehicle with, I'll call them regular plates, I don't know what else they're called, passenger car
Yeah.
plates, but who use the vehicle to go to Milton Marketplace to do shopping for the family and all of that, and then they drive it into Boston to practice law or to
Right.
engage in business.
Yeah,
Same
well, that,
thing.
yeah.
it's
That
so
was, everybody's
But
vehicle
somebody
is
doesn't like the
commercial.
look of it.
The only difference is that it doesn't have, it's used for business, it's used for commerce, but it just doesn't have the commercial plate on it.
Right.
So-
And-
Whereas somebody who's in the contracting business
Doing things legitimately.
needs that type of plate.
Right.
I mean, I don't, well, you're a lawyer, I think you practice in Boston. You used to, at
I used
least.
to, I don't
Well,
anymore, but yes.
That's a good thing, I think. But do you know any lawyers who go out and get commercial plates for their vehicles because they go to court and drive clients around and try
Actually, I
cases?
did.
You did?
Yeah, yeah. My accountant strongly advised against it. Yes.
No, but I did know somebody who did, did mortgage closings, so they were driving to people's houses to do the closings and all that sort of stuff, and got commercial plates, because I think he thought he could get a deal on the car insurance.
Right.
Or something ridiculous like that, but yeah,
Could write off the car.
yeah,
You can write off the car, but
yeah.
That's interesting.
But I think that's the only time I've ever seen that.
Okay. Let me, do you have any questions of Mr. Prondak?
Well, I'm just
Kathleen?
troubled by the idea of a variance for this, because what we're looking at is trying to allow this particular vehicle with this particular person to park on their property. A variance is something that goes on,
It runs with the land,
runs
doesn't
with
it?
the land, and I'm not so sure that's an appropriate relief.
Let me ask you this, if we gave the variance here, you give it on this specific facts, and the Surgeys move to Swellesley or someplace, does somebody, can a contractor
Well,
then use the variance?
that's what I'm
or-
concerned about, is that I would want to, if I had to give a variance, I would want to say that it was only for this particular vehicle and limited as to time. That's more a special permit than a variance.
It is, yes.
And so it seems to me that a special permit would be the way to go, not a variance, that you would do an allowance for this particular contractor, this particular van, and for a limited period of time. And if you keep your business and you stay in the house for 5 years, you come back in and you renew it. I'm not so wild about the idea of allowing a commercial vehicle to always be parked on this property.
If I just might add, there was one other case where it was presented by Mr. Cochran, and he was granted a variance,
Yeah.
and it was
Absolute
tied
contract.
to the
Yeah,
tied to the owner of the property. Should the owner of the property sell,
Yeah.
then the variance was extinguished in some
Yeah.
manner.
Yeah, and I mean, I did put in
I
the
saw that,
request.
yes.
Yeah, that it would,
be to your vehicle or to a similar vehicle.
Yeah, under 10,000
Under
pounds.
10,000
I think that
pounds,
makes
yeah.
more sense. What if I got in an accident, totaled it next week? Can't be that.
yeah, yeah.
Then
But I
you
mean,
have to come
but.
in and
Of a
see it.
similar
Yeah.
type.
Right, but something, so as I said, I'm just not really wild about the idea of saying that there can always be a commercial van parked right across from St. Agatha's. I mean, I'm just not really wild about that.
Reese, do you have any questions?
No, I just had pointed, I had, with having a similar consideration where if it's tied to a similar van and we can maybe
That owner,
construct
yeah.
it for this owner, a van that doesn't go over, that stays within these parameters and is specific to this ownership.
is there any other difference between a special permit and a variance? Like that would,
Special permits are usually to allow a particular use, and a variance is something that is varying the zoning for that particular.
Let me ask you this, because you're an attorney, but you also live in this area. To what extent should the board consider the location and the surrounding uses surround your property
I mean, that's,
on this issue of whether the commercial plates constitute some type of horrific desecration of the residential piece in Milton?
well, I mean, that was obviously an issue that caused us some angst, where,
'Cause I remember signs being, when I see you, I see signs in my head.
signs.
Signs.
Yeah, so the two other times that my name, hopefully, the only two other times my name has come up here is one with the Red House across the street on Adams Street.
Oh, the doctor.
Since
yeah.
demolished and
That
now.
since demolished is now two commercial units and 2 apartments above, which we were opposed to. And then the Heart Dental sign is probably what you have. So we sent an email opposing that as well, which was also allowed. So, I think that the character of our surrounding neighbors, taking that into consideration, it's not as if it's all residential around us. There are people who have gotten variances for commercial uses around
Including
us.
commercial on the other side of St. Agatha's also.
Yeah. So,
It's all commercial.
So that's something you want us to consider as well.
yes.
Okay. Let me see if there's anybody here who wishes to, who hasn't submitted a petition, but who wishes to speak in support of Mr. and Mrs. Surgee's application for variance, or finding that there is no violation of the bylaw. Does anyone want to speak? Yes, sir. Come on up here. Unfortunately, we're being, no, you can sit
Oh, you can-
Mr. Prondak will slide over. Why don't you sit right here? Thank you, Joe. Why don't you tell us your name and address, please?
Sure. My name's Marty Shields. I live at 26 St. Agatha Road.
Good. Welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
What do you got to say, Marty?
I've been living on that road for about, 10 or 11 years now. The Sergis moved in maybe 7, 8, I'm not sure, years ago. What they did to the area when they moved in has been, a great turnaround for the corner of the street. They took the convent that was there, he refurbished it, made it look really beautiful. It's really nicely landscaped. The whole place is really nice. I don't have any problem with them parking the van there. The van is always well kept. It's actually hidden by the bushes and the trees, really, actually. They'll continue to grow and fully hide that part of the driveway. I wouldn't want to have this, I agree with you. I think it would be a good thing to have a special permit where it would, expire at some point or not be carried over should they want to move out. I think that's a good point. And yeah, they're great people. I would just, support them in anything they do. They're always there to help us with anything that we have going on. It's good to have a handyman around, so I wouldn't want them to consider this as, the last straw. We're moving out of Milton, can't stand it anymore, that kind of thing. We want to have them around. They're really
call
good
me.
people. That's it.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this application? Yes, ma'am. Come on up here, please, and have a seat. Tell us your name and address, and we're delighted to hear from you.
Yes, Kathleen Lynch, and I'm 15 St. Agatha Road. I'm next door neighbor to them, and I have absolutely no objection to the van in the yard. I can't even see it from my house. The garage is between my house, and I have absolutely no objection.
Okay,
them
did
parking it
something
there.
else block out this vehicle when it's in there?
Excuse me?
Is that bushes or trees?
These are only
Shrubbery
in
and-
a butter in the back, so she can't see the
I
car.
can't see it at all.
It's the garage she
Yeah,
sees.
the garage and everything, and
And
they
in the-
have bushes in the side of their house, and you can't see it in the yard,
Great.
okay?
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming.
welcome.
Anybody else who wants to
And
be?
Mrs. Lynch is a lifelong resident of Milton, I should add.
Well, I'd like to say congratulations. I don't know why is this the first time we've seen you?
I've been up here before.
Oh, you should come to our meetings. Well, you're welcome here anytime. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard? Okay, is there anybody who wants to be heard in support of Mr. Prondak's position here? And there's no such person present, so unless my colleagues have any questions or comments, then do you have anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Sergi? Okay, we're going to end this.
I'd just like to add one thing.
Sure.
As both neighbors mentioned, there are arborvitaes planted next to it that were last year 2 feet tall, now they're 7 feet. You're not going to be able to even see the van soon. And you saw the picture from the front, from St. Agatha's. It's like a Where's Waldo, you can't even see it. You couldn't tell me if that was a van, or a Nissan Armada, or a Nissan pickup truck. It's beautiful, so it's not like offensive to people, You can't see the signs. So it's just gonna get better when the trees grow.
Sure. Thank you. So we'll call to an end the hearing, and we're obligated to discuss the hearing in open session.
Thank you.
And do it here and now. So let me ask Ms. O'Donnell, do you want to be heard first?
Sure. I agree that it's a violation of our zoning bylaw. I agree with Mr. Prondak's reading, and I think the term of garaging is something that people could figure out pretty clearly without having a definition of garage in the zoning bylaw. But I do appreciate the fact that there are lots of people driving all kinds of things for their jobs and being commercial vehicles. So I'm inclined to support a variance for this to take care of the zoning violation. But the requirement that there would be maintain the screening with the bushes, that it would terminate on the sale or the termination of the business. Those kinds of conditions, I think, I would want to put in there.
Okay. Ms. Chiano?
Yes, I agree. I would add in the under 10,000 pounds, keep it a similar vehicle to what it is now, so that it doesn't get replaced by something, huge. I agree that, I think that it was appropriately cited, however, a variance would be appropriate. The only other thing I would add is that the towns for which you used to support, those towns seem to have more of allowance for commercial vehicles in general. And really, the only thing that I would take from that is the fact that in each of those towns, they define their commercial vehicles as being in excess of 10,000 pounds, where here it's clearly under that. And I think as long as you continue to maintain a vehicle in that size structure, then a variance would be appropriate.
I have some questions about all of this, because I think this. I took a look at some of the regulations, and there's a regulation from the MassDOT, and it talks about commercial vehicles and what the regulations are. And they say a commercial vehicle has to have a gross weight of in excess of 10,000 pounds, okay? And then it says it has to be designed for the transport of more than 8 passengers, or designed to transport more than 15 passengers, and is transporting equipment and instruments as part of a commercial venture, okay? As I understand this, I don't think this rationale meets any of those requirements. And the other problem that I have is there's a case that I found intriguing, and it came down on October 30th, 2018. It's a land court decision. It's Chaput versus Kane. And in this, a gentleman had a commercial vehicle, and he was parking it out in the street in front of his house, and the neighbors objected to that. Do you remember this one?
Yeah.
And then at the night, he'd pull it in, and he had several other vehicles there, and they would move equipment and materials and all that in and out of his house, which he was using as a warehouse. Apparently, that was lawful in the town of Greytown and Hull. And so the question came to the land court, and I think it's Judge Long who wrote the opinion, and I agree with everyone. Our bylaw here is deficient in definition and in content. It really is it's a mystery. But when I read Judge Long's opinion, he talks about the maxims for interpreting bylaws, and they're all true. That you've got to use the language is plain, unambiguous. You've got to construe all elements of it. But he says in the nutshell that all of this stuff dealing with commercial vehicles in residential zones is inherently contextual. That's what he says. So and when I looked up the number of residents in Milton, I found there were 60,000 of them. I don't know how many of them have commercial plates. I don't know how many of the parking in the residential zones. We're the Board of Appeals here, but I don't want to be the Board of Licensure and have 150 of these applications, because they're all different. And they're all, you may get somebody who's obviously parking a construction vehicle, a pickup truck or something, or a dump truck. I don't care what kind of plates it has on it, that's a commercial vehicle. And yet here we have a vehicle which is really a personal vehicle, but since it's used in a business, Mr. Sergi, to be conservative and maybe to comply with the law, I think, has commercial plates on it to protect himself and his family, so he can have it insured. But that vehicle isn't as offensive as a truly commercial vehicle, and particularly a vehicle above 10,000 pounds gross weight. And I looked at several of the bylaws of surrounding towns, and that's what they talk about. Milton doesn't even talk about that. So it just seems to me that the question is this a violation of the bylaw because it has a commercial plate on it? Because we have to assume that the Surgeys, taken to their word, are willing to remove the signage from the vehicle. They're willing to remove the rails on the top of the vehicle.
If we have to, yes,
Well,
but
if you
we'll be in
have to.
violation of the state then.
If you...
But then, then he's got problems complying with state law and regulations.
Because the state regulations say you have
You
to
need,
have the...
you need
Yeah.
signage, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but we were talking about having signage that could be removed.
That's
He
not
just saying he
adequate.
can't do it, yeah.
Still get tickets and so forth.
Okay. Because I remember we have had several hearings on cases like this, and, one person wanted to extend the carport over, and I don't know whether they did that or not, and somebody else, the vehicle couldn't be viewed from the street, couldn't be viewed from the public way, and the question was, is this a real violation of the bylaw? So,
Well, that was the guy with the van in the front yard,
well, yes, that's right, but that's pretty obvious, so
the caravan that he was
I
like not
think
sleeping
here,
in.
the question is, nobody disputes that we can give them a variance. It's a question of we're going to have 100 variance applications on commercial plates all over Milton, and we're going to have this type of hearing when it's able to be resolved.
So
without a
are you
variance.
proposing that we then sort of have like a definition that we would insert into the bylaw of what a commercial vehicle would be?
Well, we know what the purpose of the bylaw is.
Yeah.
The purpose of the bylaw is aimed at maintaining, this is Judge Long,
Yeah,
and it
right.
seems to apply to our case, to maintaining a uniform residential appearance throughout the neighborhood, to preserve property values, and to eliminate noise and disruption from commercial operations. And he says that all of these questions are a matter of degree. And the great body of law in this area consists of drawing lines, and where the line is being drawn is whether it's rational and whether it's appropriate, and it's the body of the Board of Appeals to make that type of judgment in these instances.
So then your preference would be to say that we wouldn't find a violation in this instance, and the enforcement action would go, and we wouldn't be forced to sort of give a variance for something that we're really not.
Well, because I think
Yeah.
it's very difficult. I know, I understand what Joe was saying,
Yeah.
but I understand what the Surgeys are saying. They are in a residential zone, but nobody would believe it if you opened your eyes and you looked at the activity that's taking place in the area. We've extended all kinds of relief to businesses who wanted signage, and relief to operate commercial, at least partially commercial structures in the residential zone.
Yeah, no, I'm not
So
opposed,
that's-
I'm not
that's where-
opposed to that approach, because I think that that makes me, that sort of better approach than I'm not really comfortable about giving a variance.
And then
Because of the issue
question-
that variances run with the land. So then it would make more sense to say, okay, fine, why don't we then sort of take the interpretation from the land court and argue that this is not a violation of the zoning, and then just.
Well, I think the problem that I have is we've got to be honest about it as
Yeah.
well. And when I looked at the photographs, I didn't see the signage, okay? I couldn't see it, it was blocked. So it seemed to me that, well, if the signage isn't there, and the rack didn't look unusually offensive, the car looks like it's a personal vehicle, the only thing was the plates, and what if the plates were either covered over and then removed when you're driving to work or something, like you put a little booty or bonnet on it, or you park the car in the backyard. This is an extensive backyard, it's all shrub, nobody could even see the car. Is that a real violation of the bylaw that we should be jumping over hoops to try to cure, as opposed to somebody who's parked a a cement truck in
Yeah,
their
right,
driveway.
yeah.
Something that's absolutely foolish.
Well, I guess my question is, how are we defining this as commercial? Is it really only the commercial plates? Because as far as I can tell, the weight of the vehicle does not meet the characteristics of commercial. The racks certainly don't seem to be. And the signage is small enough, 1 by 2 or 2 feet by 1, whereas that, I think that could be, arguably, other people who don't have commercial vehicles can have signage on their car as large as
Well,
that.
see, I wonder, if I go out to my car, which is blue, and it has passenger plates on it, and I put Leonard the lawyer, I write that on, I have my phone number under there, I mean, am I violating the bylaw under those circumstances? I think I would be.
Under those, yes, I agree.
Like if you had a real estate company and you had a Suburban with a ski rack on it, what's the difference between that and my van?
What about people who put signage on their vehicles for advertisement purposes but aren't using it commercially? I mean, that happens routinely also. So
What
if
are they advertising?
they get paid just to advertise different companies, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily their own or any business that they own.
But if they're getting paid for it, or if there's some consideration, that would be
You would
commercial.
consider that to be,
Yeah,
even
I
if
think
it's a
they would.
passenger vehicle? Okay.
I think they would, but
Beetleborgs.
if that vehicle
Okay.
was in the driveway and it didn't have signage on it, and the only impediment under the bylaw was it had commercial plates on it. Number one, I don't think I'd be overly concerned about that, that people are going to spy commercial plates. Neighborhood is going to heck. And particularly if they're covered over the plates at night, or whenever during the day. See, there's no doubt.
Who can see them anyway?
Under
not
this
gonna
case,
happen.
you can park the car right out in front of your house, I
Yeah.
assume. There may
All
not be
day.
parking because of that particular street, but if you assume it was a normal street, you could park your car out there with signage, and that's lawful according to Judge Long. You just couldn't leave it there overnight. You'd have to park it somewhere else overnight. So I just wonder whether this is a tempest in a teapot, or whether it's something that...
Well, I mean,
we
I
should
think,
just-
having lived next door for one time with a guy who was running a business out of his house with trucks that came every morning and picked up the guys, and they all stood outside and they smoked, and they dropped coffee cups all over your yard and that kind of thing. We have other provisions in the zoning code to handle that particular problem, not this one. So that, you could.
But we also have this family they've designed a
Yeah.
really nice landscape to cover this vehicle purposefully, whereas in other instances,
Yeah, that doesn't
they may
happen.
not take that's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, where do we see that happen?
Right.
So
So,
what's the definition of a garage under the bylaw? What if they,
There is not one.
We don't have one.
In a car, but
is a carport a garage?
I do not believe so. To me, a garage is an enclosed structure.
So something that tented over the vehicle would not be adequate under your interpretation of the
Signs are
bylaw?
open, no.
What if-
But there are people who have purchased these portable garages.
Yeah,
so to speak.
right, those
They're
metal
low-techs.
ones, yeah.
Hoop houses, you could call them, maybe.
What did you call them?
Hoop houses?
Hoop
Yeah.
houses, okay.
Yeah, they're just a metal frame with
A metal frame with a fabric covering.
that seems to me to be way more offensive than what we're
Exactly.
dealing with
Ridiculous.
right now. So that would
Absolutely
be.
ridiculous. That's adequate.
So what about if, I mean, I understand the definition of, with the, but what about if, I know that he has to keep the sign on, because it can't come off when he goes into parking into Boston and stuff as that. What if he was to get, though, one of those magnets, but one that can just go over the signage arguably, during the evening hours, just for your property, not for when he's out, and cover the plates?
so basically get a gray.
Get a
blank
gray,
one, so you can
blank,
see.
right, and something that, one of the magnetic ones that is removable. I mean, would that be,
I think it's a great idea. You're not going to be, you can't see it when it's parked there.
I know.
It's just, you're trying to cover a problem that's not there. It's a non-existing problem.
right, but we're trying to also stop there for being a slippery slope, so,
That would be to any neighbor going by there.
right.
My immediate abutters have all written that they're cool with it.
Right.
Right, but we're
We're not
dealing
thinking
with
of you in
larger issues.
particular,
We're not.
we're thinking about what's going to, the precedent that we're setting here by saying that, oh, that's not a violation, and then saying, okay, in this particular instance, it isn't.
Does that
but
help remedy the
tomorrow it's
situation,
not.
Joe,
Right.
if they
So if we had commercial
put
plates.
a plain plaque or something on the side of the vehicle while it's parked in the residential zone? It's magnetic, they hook it on there, and then they cover over the commercial plate, and they put it in the backyard where nobody can see it. I mean, is that,
Yeah, but again, it's like your fear that you're gonna have a ton of applicants, I'm now gonna have a ton of people saying, well, I'm gonna cover over my sign.
But I'm going to keep a
But it-
cement
but it
truck, but it's
depends.
less than 10,000
right,
pounds.
if it's,
less
but
than
you have to
10,000.
deal with the specific facts. If it was a dump truck, we wouldn't care what it would be. That's a commercial vehicle, and you can't park it there. It's got to be garaged.
The only thing that seems to be making this vehicle commercial is the sign and the plates, if I understand correctly. Because the size and the racks are something that we see on residential. The
No,
size
it's
of
the
it.
size, he said also, because I have a pickup truck, no problem.
But everyone has pickups. A lot of people have pickup trucks.
Correct, it's the same
So that-
size.
that's my concern. There's a balance that has to be struck, and it has to be a rational balance. You're the interpreter of the bylaw in the first instance. We call the shots if we have to. Of course, you can appeal from our decisions as well if you think they're crazy. But this seems to me like something that is if it is a violation of the bylaw, it's so minimal that there has to be some type of rational solution that doesn't require the Surgeys to spend $100,000 on a garage, or that doesn't force the board to be granting variances, because there's nobody who opposes this application. And then we're in an instance with 10 people coming in here who have been cited by you and your trustee staff, saying, well, you gave the Surgeys a variance, so what about me? And then we say, well, the Surgeys couldn't build a garage. Can you build a garage? You're going through all these crazy distinctions, and we could be here for months. It doesn't seem like it's making common sense.
But at the same time, there was one other variance that was granted for that, and that hasn't caused that rush.
Yeah, and I don't remember that, unfortunately.
It was standard share of 75.
Yeah.
Maybe you may not have sat on that.
I may not have. Maybe I was outraged at that variance. I don't know. But do you have a sense here that if they did cover over those plates and cover over the signage, that this is something that wouldn't attract your attention, or do you want to?
If there was some kind of formal
Decision on our part?
Yeah.
opinion from the board. that-
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
a decision based on a stipulation from the applicants.
Right.
That they would, any type of vehicle that's commercial would have to be, either have no signage on it, or the signage would have to be blocked with a magnetic thing, so it wouldn't destroy the
You
edge.
talking about me or after me?
You.
While you own it. After you, nobody cares.
The problem with that is, I'm being realistic with you. When I pull in, my 3 daughters come out yelling and screaming to give me a hug and a kiss. There's gonna be some night that I don't put the sticker on.
Nobody's going to play gotcha.
You wanna bet?
Yeah, no, I do bet.
People have
because-
better
Can you
things.
put that in writing?
No, I can't put anything in writing.
It's all who complains, that's all.
Yeah, but nobody's complained here, apparently, except they saw commercial plates.
Not for me, but somebody did.
Their philosophy is, if you see commercial plates there, that's not proper. It just depends upon the nuances of the facts, as Judge Long says. And to me, granting a variance on these facts, I don't want to do that unless I'm forced to do it. I think it's bad policy. And to me, everyone here should go to mediation, and there should be some type of sensible arrangement made. And to me, that makes sense, that if you agree to cover over those signs and to cover the plates at night, then we would write a decision which would say, as long as you fulfill those conditions, there's no violation of the bylaw under those circumstances, and there's no need for a special permit or a variance, and nobody's going to play gotcha. Just that doesn't happen. Mr. Prondak doesn't play gotcha, and he won't play it with you. And no neighbor is going to say, well, now we're going to get to Mike and Jessica because they forgot to fix their sign, because if they came in here complaining, we would pay no attention to them. So isn't that the type of protection that wouldn't that help you here?
I don't believe so, because there's going to be too many
I think you
times.
should talk to your lawyer, to be frank about it, before you make up your opinion on
Well,
this.
I'm trying to be realistic with you. If it's pouring cats and dogs, you think I'm going to, like, cover up both plates and cover the signage when I'm in a driveway where I'm 100 feet off of Adams Street, by the way.
What if we put in that you would maintain substantial compliance?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it would help.
And
Maintain
that
the trees and
allows-
you can't
that-
see it.
That allows him not to
Substantial
cite you.
compliance and period.
And then you, right, and that allows you to not cite him during pouring rain or when his daughters want to come out, and it also allows you the comfort of knowing that you don't have to do it all, you can get out of those citations.
One other question is, so this vehicle, you would say, so what if, again, there was an accident tomorrow and he got a different vehicle? Is it would the same standard apply to the next vehicle? As long as it was
Of course it
under
would,
10,000?
unless the vehicle is a 12,000-pound
Okay.
tank that you're
Yeah.
parking in your
Yeah.
driveway. You know the rules better than we do, so.
This wouldn't even be specific to your vehicle, it would just be dealing with the two items that I see that are making it distinguished as commercial right now, and that is that little sign and the commercial plates. So if we deal with those two issues, and it's not then a citation,
Is there a problem with having your plates covered in your driveway?
no,
No.
it's not a public
I
way.
would
It
It might be
I would
from
even-
the state.
I would even agree that,
You
just
wouldn't,
just covering the signage would be adequate.
Okay, and not the plates, just leave
Yeah.
it. Because nobody's going to see the plates unless you're
Anyway, yeah,
standing
in
in
the
front of
dark,
the
yeah,
vehicle.
right,
Nobody can
yeah.
see them anyway. So
And we'll put in
that makes-
substantial compliance.
When you say coverage, that means view visible from where?
We want the signs covered
You can cover them,
Magnetic stickers.
with the magnetic,
One in each
you
pocket of
just
the door.
put something on it, cover the sign.
If you couldn't see the vehicle?
We don't care whether you can see the vehicle, we want the sign covered.
Because of the precedence it's setting, this will allow us to treat this differently, because this is going to basically decommercialize your truck. With I think these magnets
It's
cost
simple.
like
Yeah.
very little money.
Mrs. Sergi, do you have anything to say?
I mean,
Doesn't it make sense?
Well, I understand what you're trying to do, and I understand the struggle with precedent, but from our perspective, we just want to continue doing what we're doing, because we don't believe it's a violation, and even if you can see the commercial signage, it's not, it's not a true commercial vehicle, as you've talked about, like a dump truck or a cement truck. And so from our perspective, we're not in violation, so why should we have to modify it?
We're
you're doing-
offering a pretty simple compromise.
Right.
Very simple compromise. Of the situation, you've already pointed out that our zoning bylaw doesn't have the language that you'd like to have it, that we define commercial. Mr. Prodnex, you're putting him in a really bad position about the fact that he's trying to do an enforcement action on what he's following in the zoning bylaw. You can't read into our zoning bylaw that commercial vehicles mean it weighs more than 10,000 pounds and that it's this and that, because we don't have that in there. So you're putting him in a position, we're trying to work this out to say, we can take care of the enforcement of the zoning bylaw, which is written the way it's written, and a reasonable compromise which just says, at night, when it's parked there, you just cover it up. The sign with a simple thing. It's like 2 magnets. No big deal.
So I think Mike's point is that, and I understand all that, and but I think his point is that you can't see the signage anyway from wherever anyone is.
But that's not what the
We're talking
bylaw
about the
says. The
future,
bylaw
that's all.
doesn't say
Doesn't matter
you
what
can't
we're
see
doing.
it. It says we can't have a commercial vehicle unless it's garaged.
Right.
That's what it says. The bylaw doesn't say unless it's
So this is how you're
seen.
considering kind of garaging it.
Correct.
to block.
Well,
We're just-
it doesn't, I'm saying
Hiding the
that.
commercial, the reason it's in a garage is so that you won't see the sign.
Right.
That's the reason why the thing is worded that way. So the idea is cover the sign, then you get rid of the need to have the garage.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, if you don't want to do it, I respectfully think you're tilting at windmills, but we'll just make a decision denying your variance application. Nobody's entitled to a variance. They're highly discretionary, and we'll affirm Mr. Prondak's finding, and you can appeal that to the district court or the Superior Court, and I think at some point you're going to get before a judge who has more work in front of him or her than she wants, and he or she is going to say, is this the real world, folks? I've got people I'm putting in jail for 20 years, and I have all of these issues, and we're going to, this is like something you'd debate in the real estate class. But if you want to do that, so the offer is that Mr. Prondak, I think he's being very generous, saying that as long as you cover the signage on a regular basis and you're in substantial compliance with that, then he's not going to push this. If you don't want that, then you're entitled to your legal remedies, and so be it. Unfortunately, we've got 2 other hearings here, and I think the board is trying to take into account the specific facts that you're presenting to us, and we're trying to urge Mr. Prondak to not to just find because the vehicle has commercial plates, that's the end of it, and I think he's been more than kind and generous under the circumstances. So, do you want to talk with your husband for a second? And you can talk in private, or we'll let you recess for 2 seconds or 2 minutes or something like
There's
that.
nothing more to say.
Oh, okay. So, yes, we'll do that.
You want to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put together a decision by agreement of the parties, and get it signed, and I think your problems are...
Can I ask something?
Yes, of
Is
course
this,
you can.
if this was the result of a citation, couldn't this be an agreement that's done between Mr. Pronak and the parties, and then not be in our purview anymore?
Well,
It was
I'm not
just a
comfortable,
notice.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay.
Mr. Prondak wouldn't be either. No, this needs...
No, because it's an enforcement that's
Because they
come
came
to
in,
here.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, and fortunately, the mediation services worked, and hopefully this will end all your problems. It's, I personally think you've made the right decision. I think this is it's a unique situation, and we're dealing with it uniquely, and I think you're going to be protected, and the town is protected, and the neighbors are happy. And Mr. Prondak, who has 2 more hearings before us here, we may keep you for the 3rd, is happy, so.
Could I see a draft before you guys sign it, just to make sure I understand?